Okay, so we're live. Welcome along to the Songwriter Club Conversations. With myself, Keith, here on a Friday evening. We have two guests for you this evening. We've got Brian Sheil and we have Kevin Murray. Lads, thanks for joining us on the Songwriter Club this evening. Lads, how are you getting on?
Not Great, bad, yeah.
Thanks for asking me, Keith.
Yeah, no problem. So, Kevin, you're involved in music producing, yeah? You're working in the studio over the last 11 months or so while people are not gigging.
Brian, is it you're asking?
Yeah.
Sorry. Right, yeah, no, it's like Kevin. I've been involved in, I suppose, music producing, music recording, music mixing, probably for the last 15 years, really, Keith. Started off in this room and literally built up the I suppose the cash reserve to be able to afford your own space. And I've worked with many artists over the last 15 years and learned my craft within that time and still learning my craft. I think we're always learning every day. I work with a lot of artists based in Ireland, based in Los Angeles, obviously thanks to Google Drive and thanks to Zoom and all those kind of things. That's my background, and I'm still here in the business, Keith. So yeah.
Okay, excellent. And Kevin, yourself, tell us about your PR company.
Yeah, so I run Vamp and Fade PR, and I started the company, it must be about 3 years ago. Was previously working for a company in Dublin, and just had finished I went back to BIM as a mature student to study there. And when I came out of BIM, I was lucky enough to get a job with a PR company in Dublin for a while and kind of learned the ropes with them. And then just because it was kind of freelance work, it was up and down and kind of inconsistent. So I decided that I'd give, start my own company a go and see if I could kind of improve on the model and, do kind of a better job for artists. And so it's been going well it's kind of, at the start, I kind of had to start from the bottom and I didn't have a name, and I kind of was doing stuff just to kind of get my name out there and working with kind of friends that are artists but it's built and it's steadily grown over the last few years. So it's still growing, still got a bit to do, but it's it's going really well. I'm lucky enough to work with some great artists.
Yeah, excellent stuff, Kevin. I'm just going to go to Brian to talk about music producing. So tell us about the studio and what sort of equipment you have there, and if artists are maybe looking to work with you in the studio, how does it all work out? And obviously with the COVID situation, can people still visit the studio? I know I was at a studio myself, and you could still go and visit and get a recording done.
So I suppose I took the to use that awful phrase, the zero COVID approach to my own studio. So in March I just literally shut down in physical recording operations because there was a lot of unknown about this virus. We still don't know a lot about this virus. We're only like 10, 11 months into it, maybe 12 months. I just took the decision to, I suppose, stop physical in-session studios, as I said, because, there's an artist recording, there's a lot of droplets being shared, and, it wouldn't be the best environment for ventilation and all those kind of things. So it was really, really harsh decision, I suppose, I took on myself, but I wanted to be still alive and I wanted my family to be still alive, essentially. So, but I suppose, luckily enough, though, lads, I kind of, I have a background in mixing music as well. So that kind of saved me for a period of time. I would say right now, things are just, no one knows what the hell has happened. So I was doing a lot of mixing where people were sending me files and we could do Zoom notes and all those kind of things. So that kind of saved me in some respects. In terms of what equipment I use, I mean, it's mostly industry standard stuff. I don't particularly like to be defined by the equipment. It's more the artist and what they're looking for, and that kind of thing. But if people are looking at this and going, tell us some of the technical stuff that you have, I use SSL mixing desk. It's only one of the very small ones, but a lot of us are all in the box. So I don't think many of us can afford the $1 million desk either. Mic wise, I use Rode mics, Telefunken, AKG, Shure. And yeah, to me, it's all about the space where things are recorded as well, and how inspired the artist actually is in the space in that moment as well. So I kind of like, obviously it's very important for to have good gear, but it's more so, I suppose, the operator or the producer, the mixer, how they use the equipment more so than the actual equipment itself. I've seen that in many live instances where people have been in studios and there's like, you know, the top compressors or the top mics, and they get a not so great result. So but yeah, that's kind of like, I use Pro Tools and Logic, all of the same thing, where I use Mac as the main OS. And yeah, what more can I tell you? This business is all about hits, and well, to me anyway, a lot of people are in it for other reasons, which I am too. But I think essentially to survive in this particular business, you need some sort of hits or some sort of attachments to, I suppose, commercial success in a way. And I've never been afraid to say that, because sometimes commercial success is a bit of a dirty word. Yeah. So
do you have much input, Brian, into like the creation of the song, and do you kind of tip into the instrumentation or the structure and kind of have much effect on that?
It's a great question, Kevin. It really depends on the artist. Some artists I work with are very self-assured and what I would say self-contained, so they know the direction of the song. And actually my job as a producer is to be a conduit to realize the vision. Yeah, sometimes, like when I started off first, I kind of you don't necessarily pick up on that type of stuff as fast as I do now, you know. But I would never take the approach of having my sound. Sometimes a producer having their sound.
I get you. Yeah.
I really get that. Like if you're a huge pop producer and like you're going to generate like $1,000,000 by doing that, but it's very short-lived. I like to kind of mix between genres. Like country music was actually where I became successful initially, and then I kind of veered more into like top 40 pop records and indie records, or whatever the genre is at the minute. And sometimes genres are it's very hard to define music nowadays, I find. You know, it's like there's so many genres.
Is it easy for you to drift between genres, or do you kind of have to kind of say to yourself, okay, it's country today, put the country hat on, or do you kind of, is it just second nature, or is it tough?
I don't know. I don't know if it is. I mean, it is second nature, but I'm always very hesitant to say, oh, it's second nature, because you're kind of like, you always want to have your, you know, be thinking on your feet. You don't want to always believe that, oh, I've made it. Like I'm just phoning this session in, you know, kind of way. Oh, here's guitars, or if you're mixing a country record, the instrumentation, but it's all about the vocal and the story of the song. Whereas if it's a hip hop track, it's the 808 and the kick drum and the snare and the relationship there, you know. To be honest as well, lads, like I spend some time listening to references that people would send in as well, and just getting a vibe for what's in their head, because sound to me is very, very subjective, you know. So I would spend some time listening to references. I don't spend as much time as I see a lot of other people listening to references, because they do have an influence, but I think at the end of the day, it's not going to change. It will change a direction, but it's not going to change the final product, I don't think. But you're after highlighting a good thing there, Kevin, about communication with the artist, and maybe communicating just before they go into the studio, but what they want pre-production wise. That's kind of slowly morphing into in session and over Skype and stuff like that, because a lot of the big studios aren't being used anymore. Where I don't charge like a daily rate. I've never felt that actually worked. The artists, it doesn't give them I suppose the creative freedom. If it's like some of the bigger studios I can understand, like if they're like $800 or $1,000 a day, that's just a pure business model. But I suppose the business model here is me. You know what I mean? It's like any self-contained producer. They are the business. So sorry, I've probably spoken too much there, but yeah.
That's fine.
No.
That's fine. David Duggan sent in a couple of questions. I'm just going to read out what he sent us. We're doing recording remotely. Do you guys work like that with artists? And then he went on to say, does the artist benefit if they're so close-minded? Do they develop that way in the future? I think letting go of a little of your sound and let a producer influence a little is beneficial.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions tied up in that. I would tend to agree, but it's such a delicate balance, because at the end of the day, it's their song, it's their product, their pictures on the artwork. I'm not saying it always is, but you know what I mean? It's their name, it's their work. So that's why I use the word earlier about being a conduit between you and the artist. But there have been instances where I would feel pretty strong about something, and it's very hard to know if somebody's right as well, because a lot of things are released now. There's just so much stuff going on Spotify right now as well. Like there's 40,000 or 45,000 tracks per day being uploaded to Spotify. Like that's a kind of a scary number, particularly in a pandemic where everyone is just listening to Spotify. And if you don't have that following on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, it's very hard to get your track. I mean, Kevin, you can speak to this PR wise. Like many of the independent artists I work with, you can slowly see them turning themselves into a business, and they're asking more and more, how do I promote this record, Brian? And I'm like, I know people to go to, but it's very difficult, and the other thing I tell people to do is don't buy streams. Don't be going down that cheap avenue.
Yeah.
That does not work. Spotify, their AI is just onto that type of stuff. I mean, recently it was 750,000 tracks pulled from Spotify. And many of them actually didn't buy streams. So that's another interesting. The AI, the algorithm missed a lot of legit streams as well. So what was the first part of that question, Keith? There was an part of that question.
He talked about doing recording remotely. Do you guys
like? Oh yeah.
First question.
Recording, I don't like it. I like being in the room at some point, unless it's mixing. Mixing, I find, just leave me to it. I'll send you the notes, or I'll send you the mix and you send me the notes back. But remote recording, I mean, yeah, it kind of works if you're doing like an orchestral session and you have it there. But like even writing online and produce, like it's very, I suppose it's like what people are going through at the minute, with school teachers are going through at the minute with like online learning. Like it definitely works, but to what degree, no one knows, and to what progression for the child. I mean, there's some progression, but you're seeing a lot of because my mom is actually a special needs assistant, so you're seeing a lot of people regress in that type of mode. So I often wonder, like, is there some sort of creativity being sucked out of everything if we're doing online sessions that we don't realize in a kind of an unconscious way? So
there's something to be said for like just bouncing ideas as well,
Yeah, absolutely. Like, absolutely. I wouldn't discount it at all. But yeah, sorry, you were going to say something.
Whenever I've been in studio, some of the best ideas are just sitting there, and you play something or do something, and it'll trigger somebody on the other side of the room to be, why don't you try such and such, or why don't you do that? And then and you just don't get that when you're 4 people sitting in different parts of the country emailing the file over and going, okay, it's in time, so it's okay,
Yeah.
So I'd agree with you to a certain point for sure.
Yeah, like there's definitely a huge value to it. Like I can work with artists worldwide, so
it's a different type of project nearly. It's kind of like, all right, this is like a this type of project that we have to kind of know, but if we want to do something really creative and something like that's organic, we need to be in a room. But there's it's for what today is and how people communicate, it's definitely like a different type of project. Yeah, I'm sure we're all kind of involved in things like this where we're emailing ideas to people and stuff, and it's its own thing, but it's not the same. But it's definitely
in a way, online has kind of sped up things, but it has also slowed down things as well. Different time zones, internet access, and there's no real time. I mean, there's a plugin you can get in Pro Tools, and you can stream the session live in real time. Those things exist,
right.
but that flow is not there. There's an internet connection in the way. That creates flow. I find it isn't there. But hopefully that I've answered that question.
Right. Just a question to the two of you, actually. Do you find yourselves, maybe Kevin more so than Brian, do you find that you're more busy now than you were before COVID, because more people are releasing music than ever before, because they're not touring, so they have the time to do all this recording and releasing music?
I definitely am, but it's hard for me to judge because the kind of Vamp and Fade's name hasn't been like consistently in the industry for so many years that I can kind of see it against other years. Like for the last couple of years, I've been steadily growing, if you get me. So this year is really busy. And I can see a lot of that is down to musicians sitting at home, not being able to gig, but just having the itch to create and the itch to engage with their fans, and being able to record from home, or being able to do something like Brian mentioned, record from home in bits, send it to friends or send it to a producer to help mix, and do all these online projects to keep active and to keep creative. So I'm definitely busier, and I definitely see the results of COVID having a kind of positive effect on people releasing music, as in there's a lot of it, so it's great for people like me to kind of see so much coming in and being able to promote such great music and great artists. For sure, definitely. Yeah, I don't know, Brian, it's probably the same for you, is it? I guess, I mean, you having a lot of people inquire about recording.
Yeah, it is and it isn't. I think the fact that a lot of musicians didn't or weren't successful in that music industry stimulus package has had a profound effect in terms of there's no money there at the minute for a lot of this stuff, and I kind of worry in a way, Kevin, that your business and my business in a way are actually being pitted against one another, because they're like, well, okay, we'll just get you to produce it and we'll try and mix it ourselves because we need that fund to pay Kevin or whoever to promote it. And you're kind of like, okay, I kind of understand that, because the record could sound amazing and no one will hear it. So there's this kind of thing going on as well. But certainly at the start, I think people were, it was kind of a novelty for us all to be just staying at home and, playing. And then kind of summer happened and people were still, I suppose, creating. But I find just since Christmas, though, Kevin and Keith, it's kind of been slow enough. And I don't know if, I think money is a thing, but it's also people's heads are in weird places, because it's a creative business we're in, and we need, ultimately all of our businesses, Keith, mine, Kevin, everyone is based on creating something from nothing. And if your head is not in the right place and there's no product to create or a song or a piece of art or whatever, that is the supply chain, I suppose, of what we do. So but I think that music industry stimulus package, I think that had a bit of an effect. Well, obviously there was a lot of people successful, but and everyone couldn't get the stimulus package because there's only so much money. But I would have wished if a lot more people had have gotten it, and people who genuinely needed it as well. There was a few names on that list that I thought, do they really need that? But fair is fair, and artist is an artist. You can't pit one against the other because one's more commercially successful than the other. So you're having these weird arguments that are probably unnecessarily needed. So yeah,
I think in the last last month or two, everyone started writing Christmas songs and releasing Christmas songs, and now that all that is over, everyone's they've no money, or the creative ideas have just gone away for the moment. So I think things have normally music releases are kind of slow in January anyway, but maybe more so this time because everybody was in November, December. They were all getting their Christmas songs out and they were writing about Christmas and the way it was different this year than it was in previous years, and I think that took over. So there was kind of that, and as you say, there's a huge amount of more music on Spotify. There's more music being submitted to radio stations, and then trying to airplay all them artists and songs can be very difficult then as well.
Yeah, and just before you move on, Keith, like that's what I suppose, kind of referencing in the fact that about Spotify, the whole 40,000 tracks today, it's probably more now. Like it's very hard to get heard today as an artist, really, really hard. And like I think a national station should do even more. Like it doesn't seem to be enough at all.
Definitely.
I'm working with a lot of Irish artists, and airplay, I still think, is a huge aspect of promoting a record. Okay, in Spotify, it's playlisting, and can you get on the best playlist? And do you know this curator who has 20,000 followers on Spotify? Like in a way, I payola doesn't exist, but it kind of exists in an indirect way at the minute as well, or always has. I suppose buying streams is one way, but also promotion. Like nowadays, and I'm sure Kevin, you are the expert on this. Like, but what is promotion? Like, is it paying to be on a certain playlist? And you're kind of going, I wonder, is that the same as paying Today FM to play your track? And if it is, so that's the business, and people account for that in their budget. But it's just interesting the way the business is kind of, in a way, come full circle, even though the technology and the means and the distribution process has changed. But yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Do you find that as well, Keith, from your point of view? Like, you must get so many emails every week, with new tracks and stuff. Have you found that there's been a kind of drop off in January rather than an increase?
Yeah, I definitely think the first 2 or 3 weeks there was barely anything coming in, and now I'm starting
really
to get, music.
But
again
do you
now.
find? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go on.
Just, do you find that, like, what I tell people as well, like, it's kind of the rule, one of the PR is that the Christmas period is kind of a no-no, unless you're doing obviously a Christmas single or something, but it's just so messy in terms of like the Christmas songs there. People are obviously going on holidays. People don't know what day of the week it is. So I always would kind of advise people to just let people get Christmas over with, just give them that extra week of settling back in, because especially within the Irish industry, you have to think of everybody as just people, you kind of, the producers on Today FM or the producers and the writers in these blogs, they're all just people at the end of the day who are the same as us. They've eaten too much over Christmas. They need a week's holiday to get over it. So I always just say, leave that week and just don't bother hitting people up, because they're just not in the mood for kind of working and stuff. But then there's someone like you on the other side of it who's sitting there going, actually, there's not a lot coming through. So maybe that's kind of a good time to hit up radio, is kind of that week or two straight after Christmas, because most people are kind of like, I'm just staying away from Christmas. It's kind of such a weird market to try and, penetrate. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I definitely think over the last year, I've definitely been sent a lot more music than I would have beforehand, just with the whole, as you say, the COVID situation. I think everyone has just been releasing music since they haven't been able to gig. But as you say, I think this year everyone started getting into the Christmas market and wanted to write a Christmas song and release a Christmas song. And I found that was going on this year, whereas in previous years, artists perhaps didn't write a Christmas song and just went, oh, well, Wham and the Pogues and Mariah Carey, that's in the charts all the time, so I'm not going to bother with that. But I think people have just ignored that fact and just went, you know what, no, I'm going to write a Christmas song and put it out there and see can I get people's attention. And I think people were doing that this year. So I definitely think for the first couple of weeks of this year and in January, I think people have not been maybe not been writing and recording as much as they would normally, I think. But you're right in saying that. I mean, I don't know if you apply to radio stations in the UK. Are they different to Ireland? And obviously, we have different holidays to maybe the UK or the US or whatever in terms of sending music. Somebody might want the music now, and other people might be on a 2-week holiday. So it's very hard to know, isn't it?
Yeah, it is very hard to know, and you just have to kind of. It's like there's at the minute there's very few kind of rules of thumb. You know, everything's just totally changed, and it's about trying to come up with a campaign and a strategy that works for you, and you're rolling the dice, you know, every time, no matter what it is. Like, you know, back in the day, there would have been like, you send to radio this many weeks out, you're hoping for it gets played on radio before it goes live because you want pre-sales, because you're aiming for like a chart position, which then a chart position will then help get your name out there, which then helps the sales, you know, and et cetera, et cetera. But nowadays, it's like, especially for like, you know, I work with majority of indie artists, you know, and like, you know, they're not big names. So you're kind of thinking of it like chart positions don't exist anymore. Really, you're hoping to gain new fans. You know, when you release a song, really, what are you hoping for? You're not hoping for, like, the people that I work with anyway, you know, like, I don't work with like major kind of pop people. I've worked with a couple, but mostly it's kind of more on the indie kind of side, you know, that aren't really going for the number one. They're hoping for like kind of undergroundy radio and stuff. So what are they really hoping for with a release? They want to just grow their name, and with that, you're really hoping for new fans. So I always kind of push the single when it's available. Like, I find is kind of the best time, because if you think about even you as us all as music lovers, if we hear something on the radio, it's a brand new artist, say we've never heard, and we just go, oh, it catches our attention. We're like, oh, what's that song? The first thing you do is Shazam. Then the first thing you do is kind of go look for the song. And if you see, oh, it's not available yet, you know, it's not there, it's going to be out in a few weeks. If you don't know the artist, if the artist isn't like, you know, Arcade Fire or something that you follow anyway, you're just going to be like, in 2 weeks' time, you're going to be like, was there a song that I heard a few weeks ago that I liked? You know, you kind of, you know, you're going to forget about it. So I like going to radio when it's released, or just the week of, because it just means that when people hear it, they can get access to it straight away. They can find it on Spotify. They can add it to their libraries. They can follow you on your socials, and hopefully that then kind of, you know, gains you fans that actually like your music, and then you kind of build on that consistently. But yeah, it's just such a, there's no hard and fast rules anymore. Every kind of campaign I get is like, right, what are we working with? Have we got one single? Have we got an EP? Have we got an album? Have we, like, and then it's just all about having a long-term plan. The kind of the worst thing that happens when I work with people is they just come to me with a single, you know, and it can be a great single, but it's, you know, it's going to get a few plays. You know, the best thing you can hope for is, like, you know, it gets caught up on 2FM, it gets a few spot plays. Same with Today FM, and usually it kind of, there's a sharp drop off, and you have to be ready for the next project, because really what you want to be doing is consistently in people's feeds, whether that be Twitter, Instagram, whatever, for at least 9 to 12 months. If you're at a level of that, the artists that I work with are, where they don't have a name, you're trying to build a name, you need to be consistently there for about 9 to 12 months until people finally go, oh, these guys keep popping up, who, you know, and they're like, your name starts, you know, going into people's heads, and people then start to actually know you without having to force your fans or force your family to, you know, like your new song or whatever. So that's the kind of only rule of thumb that I push people, is like, have a plan, long-term plan, of either releases or just content, whether that be, you know, just even acoustic versions of a song. Maybe you just have you on a guitar, but set it up nicely, and give that a good push on your socials. You know, spend a bit of money on your socials as well, because that's where you'll find new fans. It doesn't have to be a single release. It can just be a nice video, you know, of a nice performance. So that's a whole other avenue of, you know, promotion nowadays that people really have to think about, you know, and kind of think about what their whole strategy is.
Do you think, Kevin, I was just listening to you there, like, I was kind of, in my head, I was trying to track back to where all this started from, and I stopped at iTunes, the idea of uncovering or disabling the album in a way that you could just buy something for 99 cents. And in a way, like, we are kind of in like a singles business in a way. But I was just going to ask you about So, like, what would be the difference between like an artist coming to you with an EP or a single? Like in my mind, I'm kind of like, geez, wouldn't it be great if the whole EP was full of singles? Because like what you were saying, you could keep every month just smashing the audience with these like new posts and new update, that kind of way. Where the traditional album, like the concept album, like okay, there's maybe 4 singles on it, and the third one in traditional days, you're hoping the third single is like the big push. So I was just wondering what you thought of that, whether as a PR consultant, the way are you hoping for, if it's an EP, like 5 great songs, or would it work as well if it was just that one single, but there were 3 or 4 songs that didn't, or over 4 minutes, it wouldn't get radio play. If these 5 minute epic things, you're like, oh, it sounds great, but you need a radio edit,
That's exactly it, and it's a singles game at the minute, and you have to think about it from the level that you're at as well. So when you think about the big artists who drop albums without telling anybody, and it just, the place goes crazy and just trends on everything. That
1 to 10.
Yeah, that's a different world, So when you're at a level that, or the majority of the artists that I work with, that you're trying to build your name and you're trying to really, what you need to be thinking about, you want to kind of become part of the landscape of, the music industry within Ireland. So, I'm sure you guys notice this yourself, where you may not hear somebody on the radio that often, but they keep popping up on your feeds or something. They keep maybe getting involved in conversations with the right people on Twitter. They maybe keep certain DJs that you follow will kind of keep mentioning their name. Certain blogs will kind of keep mentioning, oh, this person's appearing on this, and they're kind of just part of the structure of the kind of industry. They're just kind of here and there and everywhere. So that's kind of what you need to be doing, and to do that, you need to have something like the easy option, or the easy way is to have singles. So just have single. But it's a tough one to say to artists, because from when I have meetings with artists and they come to me with an EP and they're like, we're going to release a single and then we're going to drop the EP. So I obviously go, right, okay, that's grand, and I have to say, well, my advice would be all these are singles, because you've got like a year's worth of content here. You can be in conversations throughout the year. Use this to create relationships within the industry, whether it be with DJs that play or blogs, and it's not just, I'm just a really small piece of the puzzle. That's a very important piece, but overall it's quite a small piece, because it's really up to the artist to make themselves known but within in a way that they're comfortable doing. So it's natural. It's not forced. It's not pushed. It's really up to them. But it's exactly like you say. It's about singles are the way to go. But then I try to say that to people, but not in a way that's like, we need to work 5 campaigns together. But if it can, I always try to say that they can come to me and we can do, like, I'll do the big ones. Like I'll do the main single and the EP push. But once I kind of get your name out there, you can kind of see what avenues I've reached out to. It's not like rocket science really. If you kind of watch what I'm doing, see who I'm reaching out to, and then you work the next single yourself. Obviously it's maybe not going to get the same traction, but for the fans that you've gathered for the first single, it's more content. They see you're active, then that plays into like your Spotify, like you mentioned, because Spotify are looking at kind of how engaged you are with their platform. They want to see that your fans are going there, streaming it, you're getting new followers, you're updating your Spotify playlist that you have for your fans, you're updating your Spotify artwork. There's a whole other side of there that the artist needs to be aware of, that it's not like, okay, we're hiring a PR person, there you go, now get us on all the blogs and all the radio. There's like an idea of being part of the culture and part of the landscape of Irish music, and you need to do that. You need to be there for at least 9 to 12 months until you kind of see a turnaround as well. Like I've seen it with a few artists that I've worked with where I'm not pushing anything. We haven't worked together in, a month or so, but I'll see plays come in, from random stations like 8 Radio or 98 FM. So people start playing you without someone like me pushing it, because they're just in people's minds. There's a DJ sitting there who's putting his playlist together. Yeah, and he's just like, right, okay, I've got 10 songs. Oh yeah, I like that song from them a month ago. I see they're kind of still active. They popped up my feed. I'll add them to it. So that's kind of where you need to get to, and that's kind of where you need to have like a solid 9 to 12 month kind of plan in place to kind of do that,
And the thing about that is as well is that artists have spent X amount of hundreds of euro or a couple of grand on making an EP, and then they put it out there and they don't promote it or don't promote it that well, and then it's like, oh, that's gone, and you wasted all that money and all those wonderful songs that could have the potential to be promoted that weren't put out there properly.
Yeah, that is a very good point, Keith, because I have had chats with a few artists over the years that will come to me, it's like their first release, say, and I've had like proper meetings gone on for like months. We're planning a release, and they've had meetings outside of that with certain people in the industry who have then advised them, said, because this is your first single, because you're new to this, you shouldn't be hiring a PR company. You're too new to it. You should just do your own PR, which to me is like really such bad advice, because the only people that should be doing their own PR are people that know the industry. So if it's your first release, the odds are you're not really going to know the industry very well, and there's plenty of artists out there that do know the industry really well and don't need, PR companies involved, which is totally fine. But if it's your first single, you're more than likely really not going to know the right avenues to go down to get your music heard. So that's, sometimes I just think that is like, and like people like have given that advice that are well known in the industry, and kind of are well known for like being the kind of the gurus of the industry and stuff. And I just think it's such kind of bad advice, because you should nearly, if you're going to tell someone to do that, it should be like maybe your second release. Like you've released an album, you've seen who your supporters are, you've made connections. Now maybe it's your second release if you have the time and if you can be bothered to sit down and think about your whole press campaign. Then that's when you should be maybe doing your own PR, when you're confident that the right avenues to go down, and your supporters, and kind of where you can get played or where you can't get played. But yeah, it's exactly that. You see so many different kind of releases just flop because people have been given the wrong advice, been like, we're going to do our own PR, and they sit down and they maybe send it to like Nile or Nine and Golden Plague, and they don't like it, so that's it. It's gone. But you're dead right, definitely.
What do you think, Kevin, about and Keith as well? Like, what do you think about? So you have the perfect producer record and you have the perfect PR consultant, but the head of programming at the stations don't like it. Like, I think, like, obviously, I think this is where X Factor was born out of, really. The fact that DJs had this stranglehold as the creators, whether we'll make or break it. But if we have a relationship with a major label, it kind of slips through a little bit more in a way. What would your views be on that?
Yeah, Keith, do you want to go first on that one, and then I'll.
I'm not even sure what to say about that one now. I'm just thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you time to think. I think that the Irish industry is quite good for up and coming artists. I really do. Like, I think the gatekeepers of like RTE1 and 2FM especially, like they will listen to what, like I know they listen to what I send them. I'm pretty sure if
me too. Yeah, me too, for sure.
Yeah, I think they'll take it as it comes, that I've sent them stuff from a debut artist and they like it and they'll play it. And I've gotten an artist like interviews, with the big shows in there, just off the back of their song being very good and very suited to the station. So I would say that if your song is good enough, and you can reach to these people, and it suits the station. They will listen to it, and if they like it, it will get played. But it might not get played as often as you would like it to. So, like, for example, that artist in particular I'm thinking of, he had a great interview, got great spot plays, but he got spot plays for like, I can't remember exactly, but say like 2 weeks, you know, of like 1 or 2, maybe 3 spot plays throughout each week. And then this is kind of what happened. He had nothing next, you know, so he did great for like a month and had nothing to follow it up with. Now, I know if I had another single from him and reached out to the same people, they would have been biting, you know, they would have been like, yes, he's coming, he's got another one. But even at that, the regionals as well are very good. You know, most regionals will have an Irish centric show that will support you if it's good enough and it's kind of suits their show. But again, the issue is that they kind of do like the spot plays, you know, so you'll get played maybe a week or 2, and then it's a kind of sharp fall off. And that's where the bigger plan comes into play of what do you do when the song has its like 4 weeks of, you know, kind of traction with radio and stuff. You get your spot plays, the blogs, but then there's a really sharp fall off of content coming in for you, and you need to be ready with not necessarily a single, but just like you sitting there with a guitar or whatever it is, some nice photos, or, you know, that's up to the artist then to have something as content. But I do think Irish radio and media are kind of, they are supportive of new artists, but maybe the only issue is the consistency of it. You know, they don't give 3 or 4 weeks of solid plays to get your name out there. What you need, but at the same time, they're getting onslaughted with like lots of new releases, so they have to be good to everybody, and they're trying to be fair as well at the same time. So it's tough for them too. I can kind of see, but the thing that I've tried to do with Vamp and Fade, and one of the reasons why I started my own company, was that because of these kind of limited avenues within Ireland, like there's great avenues, but you know, it's a small country, you know, we've kind of got limited avenues there. So I really wanted to reach out kind of to more of a global media. So what I try and do is to kind of help the artist elongate the content and elongate each release, is to reach out to indie stations in like Australia and South Africa and UK, and, you know, wherever I can find them, that these stations, you know, it's because nowadays all it takes is an email, so you might as well just reach out to somebody in Germany as you are, you know, in Ireland. So one way that I'm trying to help the artist in that way is to just broaden the horizon and think globally, so that 2 weeks down the line, when they're not getting played, there's still an internet station in, you know, Australia that's playing them, that they can, you know, keep, you know, just use that as content nearly. You know, it might not be the biggest station in the world, but, you know, it's not to be sneezed at either. It's like when you're starting off and you're trying to grow, all these things are, you can't think of them just as plays and what each play gets you. You have to think of it as like content for, you know, your socials and keeping your fans engaged. And it's all just every piece of the pie is really important, you know.
Yeah, that's all really, really good. I was thinking about the whole, like, as you say, most radio stations have an Irish music program. Most of them have it on a Sunday night, so, you know, it's a good chance for people to maybe listening in. But as you say, like, during the week and you know, in the morning or daytime radio, it's very hard to get any play whatsoever. I mean, there is things like Select Irish, but they only pick one artist a month, and maybe that's something that they could change. Maybe if one artist a day got a play, or got I don't know, 2 or 3 plays in the week at peak times or whatever, if something was done in that sense. If you're thinking about Q102 and FM 104 and all that kind of thing, the Select Irish, and then there's the Play Irish, and you know, all the
I kind of, sorry to interrupt you, like, I think like sometimes I wonder, like, the way Kevin and yourself mentioned about these Select Irish shows, like I'm thinking of a few. A lot of them are like at nighttime when no one's listening. Like, sometimes I feel it's like, okay, they are respecting Irish music, but are they really respecting Irish music, or are they just having these shows because the BAI license would say you need to play a certain percent of Irish? Or I sometimes really ask myself this question: and this may not go down well. It's like, is Irish music good enough to compete in a kind of a commercial sense, or is it just the fact that it's not Warner or Universal or Sony beating down the drum to the program director saying play these songs? It's really hard to know. It's really difficult. But it's the one thing I see independent artists really struggling with. It's like what you say. It's the consistency of getting the plays, and sometimes I feel hits are not generally, but sometimes created by just the repetition of being on an A for 4 weeks, and it's in people's head, and they're like, "Oh, I kind of like that song," So
Definitely.
It's difficult to quantify it down to one thing, but
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. All right. In terms of then, I mean, there's a lot of those TV shows as well. I was in touch with like the Today Show, and they're doing something at the start of the show where they let an artist come on and sing 2 minutes of a song and do an interview. So there's things like that starting to happen, and I think they seem to be interested in doing that. I think since this pandemic has been on and stuff, they've got interested in things like that. But certainly, I think country music gets a huge amount of TV airplay on the likes of TG Carter with the Clores here.
But
for other genres of music, sometimes it can be left behind a little bit, can't it? Like even, as I said, even with country music, and like they get their late show slot every year and stuff. But should other genres get a slot? Should indie bands get a slot? Should a pop dance act should they get slots on TV and major radio stations as well then?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting question, Keith. I think the likes of RTE realize that, because sometimes I think a lot of the Dublin stations that are national, sometimes as a country person, I still feel this sounds like a Dublin station still. And I think maybe RTE and other people realize that country music, there's a lot of people interested in this type of music, and they're in a business, and we've advertisers to I suppose satisfy. So if we get the viewership, this is like to look at it from a pure business point of view. I think that's why that worked, and that's why that happened. But you're right, like you could make the argument, why isn't there not like a grime week or a grime show, or I don't know, like it was more UK music, but why isn't there like underground music show on the Late Late Show? You could make that argument, but I think what they would say to you is that we want viewers, and if by the mere fact that it's underground would suggest maybe that it doesn't have the audience, but they could be wrong about that too. Some people want to stay underground. So yeah, I don't know what your view on that, Kevin, is.
Yeah, there seems to be like TV things happen randomly. Like there was even on TG Car, I think wasn't there a few years ago, there was a very good show there. I can't think of the name of it now, but there was a show that had some indie artists on it, and even like you have the Tommy Tiernan show now that kind of his guests are usually a bit more indie. And I know he did that.
He picks them or something, does he? I get that sense that it's like he likes these people, which is quite interesting to have that editorial control. I could be wrong about that, but
well, I know I've spoken to his producers a couple of times that I've pitched to without any luck, and I'm not sure I don't know exactly now. He might have a say in it, but I know there's actual like music producers that work there as well.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not sure though. He might have a say in it. It feels like he does, doesn't it? Because it's so.
Because this feels like God. I've never seen this before. Like every time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And even he did that. He had that one-off TV thing there as well. Was that on RTE, where he had some great artists kind of all over playing in kind of random places.
That's right. I saw the promo video. He's in Vicar Street, right? I think.
Was there one in Vicar Street? I know he did. There was another one where they had in Whelan's as well. No Soda Blonde did that one. But so there was like, I think the thing about TV is like, yeah, you have the late, and that is also good, sometimes, but I know what you mean. It's kind of, they're not really going to show the real indie kind of artists. Although Soda Blonde got on that as well, early days, which was great. But yeah, there's TV kind of seems to be. We need like a more consistent show. Even remember, Imelda May had that great show that was kind of loosely based on, that BBC show with Jules Holland. Yeah, and I thought that would be a great show to have, because you could have like a real mix of, the legends, and then mix that in with kind of the up and coming artists. And it looked like that was going to be a really good show and a great avenue for kind of the up and coming artists. But I know it never is it coming back. I haven't seen it in a while, but
no, I don't know. I think she got 2 seasons from it. But yeah, I thought that was a really, really good show as well. But
yeah. So there
are
are different avenues, but yeah, it's limited. It definitely is limited. But I mean, it's limited everywhere really. TV is the the main thing. It's always going to be the toughest one.
Yeah, and even like the likes of the Late Late Show. I mean, they possibly only have about 3 music slots in the whole show every Friday. So if you're not in a record label or you're not a really, really good artist or well known, it's going to be very hard to get on the show, even though there's many people watching it.
Like it kind of like, I suppose if you're like, I often think like if you were a radio station, you would just want to keep playing all the stuff that are hits. In a way, you're kind of what's in it for the station. Now, obviously, there's like if it's a government funded station, there's like a moral obligation or a legal obligation or whatever. But sometimes you're kind of thinking, if you're just like a commercial radio station, you're kind of thinking, why would you want to play something that not a lot of people have heard? And obviously, it's not the right approach because it's all about content and can you make a star and all those kind of things and get new listenership to your radio station as well. But again, come back to the Irish thing. It's just like it's like a genre. Just let's stick that there. 30%. Yes, we have our lessons tick.
Yeah,
that's the kind of. I don't think it hasn't still got the full respect. I think in the last maybe 10 years, there's been a change of different program directors here and there, and it's really starting to take off. But as you say, Kevin, quite rightly, the consistency isn't there. And it would be great if it was, it would be really great if it was.
Yeah. That's the main issue, I think, especially for up and coming artists to get their name out there.
Yeah.
The spot plays are well and good, but really when you're not known, to try and become known and to kind of get your name, out there, you need like consistent plays over the space of weeks and months, That is the main issue with radio, I think, at the minute.
Just for any artists that are watching, if they want to go to the studio and work with you, Brian, and then I'll ask you, Kevin, if they want PR, what advice would you be giving artists, and how do you work with artists and stuff like that? So I'm asking both of you that question. Maybe Brian might go first. And if someone's interested in coming to your studio to record, what way would you work with them and stuff like that? So.
I usually it depends if they want to record as in like produce or if they want me just to mix, because I really enjoy mixing music as well. That's the way I started off actually, like as an engineer, because I always wanted that kind of background. I didn't want to be like a musician producer and not really understanding what was happening for half of the record process, or just kind of half understanding it. So it really depends. I've had some people send me stuff that they've got produced by another artist, but they want my production on it as well. They feel it doesn't have whether it's the commercial sensibility or it doesn't have the whatever pizzazz factor or whatever word or term they use. I've been doing a lot of that actually lately. But I think I usually start off with asking the artist, if they're looking to record, have they got a demo, even an iPhone recording, because I like to hear what they sound like, the way they're going. So I've done this on a few occasions. Sometimes I feel I'm not the right producer for you. I'm not going to take your money just because you have a budget, because it's a waste of their time, waste of my time as well. But I'm in that moment of my career where I'm kind of like, I can't be choosy, but yet you have a standard to I suppose uphold to as well. So it's quite difficult one to balance. So yeah, to answer your question, I suppose, Keith, directly, it's send me demos and just let me hear what's going on and give me a sense of who you are. You know, when I play the demo, do I hear you in it, or do I just hear another artist who you're trying to copy? It's all about me. About, do I believe the artist? You know, when they're singing, do I believe this person? Do they have a great message to send to people? And yeah, how much do they believe, I suppose, in their art as well, is a huge one. I like to have artists that write songs as well. Sometimes it can get a little bit tricky if they're depending on other songwriters, although it does happen and it can be just as successful. Yeah, and then the other side of what I do, I master records as well. So sometimes you're just getting in a track that's, you know, 2/3 of the way finished, and they're just looking for the shine. So yeah, sometimes the records that I produce I don't master, for instance, or sometimes I wouldn't take a mix approach on it at all because I just get too attached really quickly. So yeah, it really all depends. I know that's no one wants to hear that answer, but it usually starts off with a demo, or let me hear where you are, and then just DM me on Instagram or wherever, and let's talk.
And is there particular genres of music that you like working on as well?
I kind of gravitate towards the more commercial side of stuff, but you could say to me, well, what is that? You know, so as I say, I've started off in country music. One of the biggest artists I've worked with is Derek Ryan. That's where I had my first #1 in country music. I worked with Derek about 10, 12 years ago, when he was just coming over to Ireland, and he was telling me about he wanted to go into country music, and I heard his songwriting, which is phenomenal, like out of this world, even some of the pop tracks he was writing then. So that's where I started. But in the last maybe 4 or 5 years, I've been going totally pop, whatever that is as well. I've been produced some hip hop records, some really straight pop records, some indie records. Most recently, I've been mixing an artist called Sage, which is a collective, Colleen O'Reilly, which has been amazing. So I'm kind of in that, I wouldn't say all over the place, but it's definitely eclectic. But I love hearing records on the radio. I grew up listening to the radio, and I want artists to succeed. You know, there's nothing more depressing than seeing a record that you've worked on, where you've produced it, mixed it, whatever you've done to it, and it's just sitting on Spotify with the negative 1,000 plays on it. You're just like, damn, what's going on? So I'm starting to go into that area of my career now where I want more success, really, you know, because I kind of want to stay alive in this business. So yeah, pop, hip hop. I collaborate a lot with different producers, primarily one in LA and one in Dublin. And the reason I collaborate with them because they have a skill set that I have, but I don't have to their level at all. And you just release your ego and collaborate, and the project becomes much better for the artist. So when we send the record to Kevin, Kevin's like, yes, this is the best record I've ever heard, or whatever.
Yeah. This has got Brian Sheil's name written all over it.
Yeah, so like whatever it takes to, I suppose it's been like maybe 5 or 6 instances sometimes where I've heard a record being mixed by somebody and they wanted to sound better, but all it'll take is 5% more from the previous mixer, and I would say it would be better if you stay with that mixer because this X, Y, and Z. So I'm not business hungry. It's more about the artist and growing the artist to a consistent level that they'll have a career for 10, 15, 20, 25 years. I want to be there for those moments as opposed to the transient hit and then no one ever hears about it, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. And you were mentioning as well, Brian, the fact that you sometimes work with people on a little bit of their project, whether it's only just the mixing or whether you record it or whether you just master it. So there every project is different. It's not some people you don't work the full project from start to mix to mastering.
Yeah.
And there may be the odd person you probably, as you say, there are people that you would do the whole process with, but the other people you just do the beginning, the middle, or the end of the process.
Yeah, like it really obviously if you start from the beginning to the end, it's the longest thing. Like I haven't produced an full album in a while, which is a probably indication of the way the business is going as well as much as um, the amount of money your artist would be able to source to finance a record, you know. Um, but yeah, I really enjoy all stages. Obviously, producing, if it's a collaboration, things are usually done a little bit quicker, and you don't have to worry about as much. Um, but yeah, like in America, which I hope to be at some point, or in London or wherever, in America things are more segregated. You know, you're just a mixer, or you're just a producer. You obviously can do both, but I think the American way seems to be that you're just really good at one thing. Where I think in the Irish UK, it's been traditionally like the producer slash engineer, and mixing was never, it was a thing, but it was never called mixing. Like now you have mixers, you know, it's just, it's interesting that the titles, and I think technology has enabled me to become that mixer in a way, because a lot of the time as well, like I find when I'm mixing, it's great to not have anyone in the room, just because you're chasing the flame and just doing your thing, and then get external forces to influence you as well. So yeah, I enjoy all aspects of music making in a way. Yeah,
I think because the Irish music industry is much smaller, we tend to be more multitaskers. We tend to do three things for one thing that maybe an American would do. They specifically the booking of a gig, or specifically be the studio engineer, or specifically do PR in the US, or PR in UK, or the specific jobs. I think obviously when you go higher up in the industry and all that level, because of the small nature of the Irish music industry, going to the studio, they may do all three things, or you know, the PR may do the booking of gigs and managing and do the tour managing and doing the actual plan of an artist as well. So there's the multitasking thing going on. Whereas, you know, you were talking about the American thing, that there's like 8 people that do different jobs. So it's different, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You probably see that even more so in songwriting credits now. There's nearly like a list of length of your arm about who's writing songs, and there's probably only really 2 or 3 writers on it, and the rest are just like, hey, we can't make money on records. We just put us down in the publishing there for 5% and just, you know, let me pay for this Tesla outside, you know. There's definitely a bit of that, but yeah, I think I do think though, in a way, guys, you can you be a master at everything? I don't know if you can. And again, I'm at that point in my career where I'm like, is it producing, or is it mixing, or is it mastering, or is it a bit of both, or you know, I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure what it is yet, because I can do all three. So, but there's just a kind of you get known for one thing. Like if I mixed Ed Sheeran's next record, or Adele, like if I was ever that lucky, there is a real possibility that you would be just morph into just a mixer, and you become so busy, and you'd be just mixing records. So I worry about that, and I also look forward to that if that was ever lucky for something like that to happen, you know. So yeah, that's all I can think about.
So Kevin, tell us about an artist if they want to approach you at your PR company. How do things work? Obviously, you have a meeting and a chat and talk about what they want to do as well, I suppose.
Yeah, so the first thing is same as Brian, really. Just send me some music. It's if you want to email, you can just email info@vampandfade.com. And really it starts there. So usually what happens is somebody will just send me through, whether it be a single, EP, or album. Every project is different, but it's what I would say is kind of be ready. Like I always kind of tell people, you almost have to present yourself like you're kind of ready for stardom. Like you have to have your press shots done. You have to have your cover done. Yeah, and all of this has to be of a quality of similar to the artist that you're trying to, to follow, you know. So you have to like look up the bands that you like, see what their artwork's like, see what their press pics are like, and reach that kind of standard. That's the main thing that kind of people fall down on, is when they sometimes reach out to me, is like they have, as you said, Keith, before, is like, you know, they have the music, they've spent so much time and effort and money on this product, and then they're just like, right, let's go, let's get it out. You know, they're almost, and I've been in that position myself, where you're so excited that you have this music that you're just like giddy with excitement to get it out, you know, but you have to kind of slow people down a bit and go, okay, we have this, now we need the other pieces of the puzzle. So what I would say to people is, when they reach out to PR, whether it be myself or someone else, is to have the music. It doesn't even have to be like finished and mastered, but just reach out, connect with people. And I can normally tell, you know, even if it's not like the final product, whether I like it or not, you know, and whether it's kind of going to fit what I do. And then it's just about, coming, like having a chat, as everything is nowadays over Zoom, seeing what the kind of plan would be. And as I say, like everyone is different as well. So somebody might want to just like, you know, machine gun off the singles and be like one every month. Or someone else might want to do like, you know, a single and maybe wait a few months and kind of feel out how that goes. And everything has to be taken on its own merits. Like there's no kind of real bad ideas, but I try to steer people in the right way. So if someone wants to take longer with the singles, to just make them aware that, you know, that dead space is maybe not ideal. But if someone wants to, you know, release singles right after each other, maybe just slow them down a bit and be like, right, you're kind of, you know, you're overlapping yourself here. When you release a single, normally you'll have like 4 to 5 weeks of radio play and content to stuff to shout about on your socials. So don't release something too soon, because it's gonna get messy, and radio or blogs are gonna be like, didn't I just play something from them, or is this a new single? So you kind of, you know, it's just about managing people's kind of time and expectations, and kind of seeing what they want to get from the project. But yeah, the best thing for me is, as we spoke about earlier, is kind of, and the best thing for an artist is singles, really, and trying to make sure that they have a really a year-long plan of staying, you know, relative and in the you know, within the industry and staying in people's minds. But yeah, it's as simple as kind of just giving me an email with a link to either old stuff, even if you haven't got your new stuff ready, but you want to, you know, start making connections. I'll kind of get an idea of what kind of your sound is. But one thing actually Brian mentioned there that I thought was interesting is that he kind of, I don't hear people mention, and sometimes I forget about it myself, but it happened to me recently of like, you know, someone sent me music that was really, really good, you know, like the song was really good, the production was really good, but it was a sound-alike almost song, you know. It was like you could name the artist that this person listens to nonstop, you know, and it was as good as it was. I think it's a real turn off for radio and blogs, you know, to have someone they can be so good within, like, even their songwriting ability so good, and their, you know, the people that they've worked with production wise are so good, so they've got a really good product, but it's just too much like somebody else, you know, and it just takes that originality not being there. It's kind of, I think, a real turn off for radio and media, and like, even like, because they're all music lovers, you know, they're just like ourselves. So if someone sent me a song that was just, you know, like, you're never going to beat the greats. You're never going to like beat Radiohead. You're never going to beat Bruce Springsteen. So try to obviously use their influence, but come up with your own sound and your own ideas, but don't overdo it. That's just one thing I wanted to point out, just because Brian mentioned it. I thought was a good point, that use your influences in the right way, but don't overdo it, because there's a lot of people recently have reached out that are just too on the nose with the bands that they listen to. You know, they need to kind of have a bit more of a melting pot rather than a straight off influence, you know. But other than that, yeah, if I like something, I'll work with anybody, as long as I have the time, and I can give everybody kind of the right amount of time and effort that they deserve. I'm happy to work with anybody, really, in any genre, from like pop, if it's something that catches my attention, even from pop to indie. Not really so much into kind of the rap side, but then again, if it was kind of good enough, or I kind of, you know, took my fancy, I'd work on that. So I wouldn't rule out any genre, really, but yeah, happy to just anybody who's looking for PR, drop me an email, info@vampandfade.com. We'll take it from there.
Excellent. And I'm just going to ask you guys about it. Like, there's different artists, singer songwriters, and bands they're at different levels, or they do music in different ways. Like, some people do music and they're pretty much full time at it, and they may be able to record a lot of singles, or they have the money to do it. There may be other artists that don't have as much time, or they don't have the money to record as many singles, or they have part-time jobs or full-time jobs or families and all these other things. So there's all these factors that kind of come into play. So, you know, like, you have to take all that into consideration when you're working with them in the studio, or when you're doing the PR end of things. Are they going to be available to do the interview if they're busy working, or, you know, can they make the studio on a particular weekday when they're working? Or, you know, there's all these kind of factors. Like if you're an artist, you don't have a lot of income coming in. Maybe you can only record 2 singles in the year, whereas another artist might be able to do 4 singles. So, you know, you have to take all these factors into consideration. How do you guys kind of work around all of that then?
I'll let you
go ahead, Brian.
Okay. It's a great question. As you were speaking there, Keith, I was thinking about instances actually where family members or relations would have an opinion on the music, and they could be in the studio, and it's a kind of a weird one because, you, as I say, you're serving the artist. So it's a constant. It's almost like being a psychologist in a way. What we do, you know, because it's managing emotions and tempers and managing relationships. Really, is what it's about. So I think you have to be respectful of all those things if they have a job. But yeah, it definitely influences them, probably in a good way and a bad way. Like, probably in a good way, they have the money to work and because, you know, money is really the fuel of what they're doing. But it is a good point about like, maybe is there a difference between an artist who's just solely concentrating on their art? Sometimes that's really admirable. And sometimes you do get better results because of that, but you have to also be realistic and say, well, how are they paying the rent and all those kind of. You've heard all the stories with Ed Sheeran or Adele or whatever, you know, sleeping on couches and going from house to house and all the rags to riches stories, you know. So I think every artist generally goes through that type of struggle. But it is a really good question. Like, it does influence, but as I said, the one thing that came to my head as you were speaking there was just all of the opinions on the music, and they can get quite tricky at some points because the artist is lost and they're looking at you for another opinion, and, you know, it's managing conflict in a way, or that it doesn't get to that point as well. You know, there's a lot, as I say, a lot of managing emotions. It is the emotions business at the end of the day too, you know. So yeah, good question.
Another point I was going to make in that as well is that I've met people in music, interviewed them or did gigs with them, whatever. And it's funny because you meet people at different age spectrums as well. So there's a student going to college, they're studying music. There's someone that maybe has retired from work or in the later years of their life, and they picked up music and they're really into it and recording albums and doing stuff. And, you know, there's people of all age backgrounds, all types of jobs, whether they're students or whether they're working part-time or full-time, or whether they're wedding singers trying to do the original music on the side. I've met so much of all of this. And it's just, it's amazing the way people come from different aspects of life as well.
Yeah. What I was thinking there as you were speaking, Keith, was that in what I do, I suppose up until, I don't know when, maybe in the last 10 years, it probably still is to a certain extent, the pop music industry. Like, it's definitely a young person's game. And the amount of touring that's required, and like the amount of touring the Irish country artists do is crazy. Like, it's like, I've worked with a lot of them and worked on the gigs, and you look at the mileage on the vans and stuff and the trucks, and you're kind of, it's crazy. They could be doing 200 dates a year, 250 dates a year, and, you know.
Wow.
So I think in that scene, in the country music scene, you see more of people that are 30 plus, 25, 30 plus, which is quite an interesting thing. You can be successful, where if you're trying to be the next Ariana Grande or Billie Eilish, you're kind of like, let's start at 15 or 16, but yeah, it is there. Music is, people come across at a different point in their lives, and I suppose people realize their talents at different stages in their life as well. But that's not to say that if you're like 65 years of age that you can't be a star. And more of the belief that is possible nowadays, particularly with TikTok. That's the one thing that's like, if you look at the likes of, this is not directly related to the point I was making, but if you look at, let's say, the Weeknd song Blinding Lights, TikTok broke that record. So I'm sure TikTok could break something else in an unconventional manner. Like, there was no label required for Blinding Lights in a way. Okay, everyone knew it, but so you see things like that about how records are broken. Surely they can break artists like that nowadays too, that don't fit the conventional, oh, you must be pretty and blonde and so yeah, good question.
And to yourself, Kevin, I'm sure you've met all walks of life that are working with you in music.
Yeah, that was actually kind of a bigger factor pre-COVID, because part of like campaigns, there would have been a lot of sessions, live sessions and radio sessions that would have been involved in every campaign. And what would happen if an artist was tying in a tour with the single release, you could reach out to kind of, regional stations to get them in to do a live session and such. So those would be hugely affected if someone, was older and had commitments and, couldn't get around and do interviews. And that's just part of the game, it's about, if someone's like has more time and is more available, it's better, you're gonna be able to go travel to Donegal or travel to Wicklow and do a radio interview, and because you don't care, you're just excited about getting into a radio studio, it's part of the buzz. But if you're a bit older, you're like, is this really worth my while? I have to like spend 60 quid in diesel, and I have a kid that I have to get a babysitter for. Yeah, so unfortunately it does, obviously going to play a factor. If someone's got money to burn and time to burn as well, they're going to be able to get around. But saying that, over the last year, those like kind of live sessions aren't really happening at all. So the interviews and stuff, ones that I've got are normally kind of pre-records and obviously kind of over the phone. Same with like, if press are doing interviews, you can kind of, people are flexible. So it hasn't really mattered over the last while, but that's because there's not as many avenues just with live sessions gone. So any interviews are just, they're flexible kind of artists. But yeah, in a normal year, yeah, it's going to matter if you don't have the time, and the money to spend to get around to, the live sessions were kind of the main thing, because they were like a great add-on for our campaign. You kind of have to shoplift a single when you were kind of, your single was released at the start of the month. In 3 weeks' time, you were spinning down to Cork to do a live session. It was all part of the, the buzz in the campaign. But yeah, in a normal year, it would be, unfortunately, it's like anything, if the people with the money and time are going to maybe just take advantage of those more so than people that have kind of commitments and with work and such. Yeah.
And how have you found as well radio over the last year? A lot more people are kind of pre-recording their shows as well. So, it's like they'll do a Zoom interview or a Facebook phone call or a mobile call or a WhatsApp call or whatever to do the interview. So it's very different, as you say, to, we're going to go to East Coast FM and do Declan's show. We're going to go on and have a chat. Whereas now it's just a phone interview and they might play the song and that's kind of about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's good for some people, who are actually, as you said, maybe have more commitments. It suits them perfect. They just can do. Some people prefer to just be able to jump on a phone call, and if they get their single played, they're happy out. And a wee chat is great. But some people, I'd be kind of maybe more like yourself, Keith, I love going to radio. You know, when if I could, you know, when my band gets a chance to go to a radio or something, I love it because it's just a good buzz. You know, it's something different. It's so yeah, I would miss it myself if I was kind of like doing a campaign, but it's but at least it's great to see DJs, you know, also being flexible and still trying to, you know, conduct interviews and help artists in that way, and, you know, try to promote them more so than just playing their song, but giving people a chance to get to know the artists. And I think that really helps when people get to hear the artist speak and talk about the song or the process or whatever. So it's great that there are still those avenues, and hopefully the in-studio stuff comes back soon enough. You know, that's another great one for artists.
And especially in community radio as well, the community radio presenters and stations, they're actually looking for the content as well. They're not restricted to so many shows that will have to play these amount of songs and these amount of ads and and the news has to be on at this time. With the community radio, there's a bit more flexibility. So there is the chance to get that 2-minute interview or whatever then on community radio.
Yeah, and you've always been great at that, Keith. Like, fair play to you. You know, you're always one to have artists in there, and I think it's a huge thing for an artist, you know, to do, especially like when they're starting from the bottom, or, you know, they're just on the way up. Shows like yours are so important for people to kind of just see how it all works, and to meet someone like yourself who's like a great supporter of Irish music, and no doubt will be in the industry for years to come. And, you know, these kind of connections that we make will stand to you. You know, if you plan on being in the industry for a long time, you need to kind of get to meet people face to face, you know, and make connections, because emails are kind of, it's a very easy, like, it's a faceless kind of way to connect, and it's very easily to kind of not hear from somebody ever again. You know, it's not just but yeah, no, live sessions and the stuff that you do, Keith, is very important. So hopefully it comes back soon.
Yes, absolutely. I'm gonna let you guys go. Have you any more things you wanted to say before we end?
It's just one thing there, lads, I was thinking about, and it's probably a theme that has been cropping up throughout this whole conversation, which is content creation. And it's like when Daniel Ek, I think that's how you pronounce his name, the CEO of Spotify, was saying everyone at Spotify now is a content creator. To me, that's really exciting and also really scary at the same time, because I don't know how artists or songwriters, as it is a songwriters club, would feel about rebranding themselves as content creators. And does artistry, or is there a lot of artistry lost in content creation because everything is so like fast the way it's consumed? Like TikTok, you watch a video, shared, like, that's it. It's viral for a week max, maybe, I don't know, a day. So I don't know what way it's going to be, but it's just, if most of what we're speaking about ends up on Spotify, on Apple Music, and if that's the company's view of what people put up on there, I wonder how that will change what we do. It may not change anything at all, but more and more, Kevin, and you can speak to this about, you mentioned earlier on in the interview about promoting your social media and that type of thing, which is, you know, it's not a traditional way of advertising. It is now, obviously, in the last 2, 3, 4 years. But I suppose it speaks more broadly to the point of, like, the industry is changing yet again, you know. I don't even know if streaming has taken off. Like, maybe, like, how many people in the world have access to streaming, you know. So I don't know if Spotify is in every country in the world. I don't think so. Things like that you'd be kind of wondering about in the future. But yeah, I just thought I'd mention that just before we finish.
Yeah, no, you're dead right. It's unfortunately, it's something that I think blogs and kind of media would jump to your socials first thing they do, you know. Maybe after they kind of hear your song, they want to see what you can give them, because a lot of these, like, blogs and radio, if they're not, like, you know, the enemies and the pitchforks of the world, like, they're kind of, a lot of these blogs are starting out as well, and they want to promote musicians and can promote them in a way, you know. So I know there's a couple of blogs. Yeah, there's a couple of blogs that I reach out to that ask for your social numbers, you know, which in one way I hate, but in one way it's like, well, they're just being honest, you know. They're just kind of like, right, we're doing this, you know, for free. We you know, you help us, we'll help you, type of thing, and it's actually kind of works well in this particular instance with these guys. But yeah, it's crazy. I mean, even I was telling a friend the other day that I saw on TikTok. I just recently downloaded that, and it's crazy, you know, kind of how it works. But I saw one particular video, and it was just this girl was on her door, if you can picture like her door, but she was like draped over it, like her legs on one side, her head on the other, and it was just a video of her lying on her door, and her song was playing in the background, and he had a wee caption that said, "My dad says that this is no way to promote my new single, Prove Him Wrong." And so this video had like, you know, over a couple of million likes, and all the comments were just like, you know, okay, boomer, you know, this is how music industry works nowadays, get with it, you know. And I was just like kind of blown away going, yeah, you know, like this is a legitimate way to get your song heard nowadays, is to drape yourself over a door and create a funny video and just tell everybody on the internet to, you know, to give a finger to my dad because he just doesn't know how the industry works anymore.
Like, it feels what you're saying there, Kevin, just before we finish, Keith, like music is now just another tool to market your brand as opposed to being everything, you know? Do you know what I mean by that? It's like the artists are now brands as opposed to an artist in a way, you know, and music is just another avenue to promote that, whatever the artist is, you know? I don't know if you agree. You may not agree, but
I don't, like, I think at the bottom of it all, like, you know, I think definitely it can be a part of it, and it will help artists in a way, but at the bottom of it all, if you have a good enough product,
sure.
And in our business, it's a song. If you have a really good song, the head of 2FM, if that's where you're going with, if it's a really good song and it's for 2FM, he will play it, you know. And if you have another one, a second single that's consistently good, he'll play it again. And then if you have a third one and he's going, this person is consistently good, they're going to be here for a while. And the other thing about PR is that you need to prove to people that you're going to be here for a while, because if you just drop in a single, a lot of people, you know, radio maybe especially, are just kind of like, well, you know, this is out of nowhere, you know, okay. But if you're consistently there to say, okay, this person's here for the long haul, they're putting in a lot of effort, we'll give them an extra chance, you know. And I think I definitely think you're right in that you kind of have to have your fingers in a kind of lot of pies. But I think if your product is good enough, but even when I say product, I also mean like your visual side, you know, like that's just kind of a given at this stage. It's like, okay, you have to have a good song, but you need to go out there and get good quality press shots, and you need to have maybe not on your first couple of singles to have a video. I think nowadays you can release a single and video isn't too important if you're just on the rise. But by video or by single, like 3 or 4, if you want to be taken seriously, you need to have a very good video that's of a high standard, and then you need to keep getting better and prove to people that you're in it for the long haul, and you're worth them, you're worth their time, and you're worth their effort, because if they support you early and they can think, oh, this person's going to do well, they want to be in at the bottom too, you know. Like I've had, you know, definitely I've seen that kind of in effect, is like I've sent through good music, and I know that DJs and journos are kind of thinking, this is going to be good, this is going to blow up, I'll get in early with this, you know, I'm definitely going to support it. And so that's the way I think it works. But you're dead right. It's about, you know, being a kind of a brand, but not really as well. If you have a good team around you that are kind of looking after different aspects of it, and if it's also about your demographic as well. You know, if you're reaching out to people like me, you don't need to have a TikTok. But if you're reaching out, you know, to 15-year-olds, they want to see you kind of, you know, on these platforms. So yes and kind of no, you know. If I think at the bottom of it all, if you have a brilliant song, people will play it and it will probably get picked up. But you need to promote it in the right way. You know, you need to, I guess, go down maybe throw a few quid down to the socials as well. Make sure that you're hitting. There's no point just reaching out to the people that your friends and family on Facebook. You need to make sure that people who don't know you at least have a chance to hear that. And one of the best ways I think nowadays is throwing a few bob on Facebook and Instagram especially, and those avenues.
I suppose people at the moment, I know a couple of people that are doing Facebook and Instagram live gigs. How do you feel about that kind of avenue? Some people do it kind of weekly. They do a gig for an hour, and I think it's to kind of keep you busy, and also to keep you ticking over for when live music does come back, that an artist is ready to get back and perform on the live stage again.
Do you want to go take that, Kevin?
Yeah, I think it's a tough one for sure. I mean, I've spoken to nearly every artist that I've kind of worked with recently has kind of dipped their toe into it and maybe taken different things away from it. Some people just kind of don't see it really working. But what I would say is, if you're going to do it, it's for your fans already. I don't think you're going to gain fans from it. So it's just about having content for your fans, and it's just maybe to check in with them. But I would say, if you're going to do it well, because I've seen people just with a camera and going live, and it works, it's fine, but I just don't think you're going to have people's engagement for that long. I know even me, I love music, and some of the artists that I love have done Facebook lives, and I just kind of turn off. I get a little bit bored after a while and turn off. And I think that might be the main kind of problem, is that people get bored. So I would say it's a great thing to have at our disposal, but do it well, and maybe kind of think about doing it, adding in a kind of an original kick into it some way to to make it special, and maybe make people talk about it. Because I don't know, it's definitely kind of a weird topic, or kind of, there's no hard answer with that one, because some people it works for, and they love doing them, and they kind of found, I know some people have actually like added a Patreon, or like a tip jar and stuff, and they found it a good way to kind of keep some money coming in over. So it has worked for some people, but some people it hasn't. So I don't really have a proper answer for you, other than some people it works for, some doesn't.
I think the awkward thing about it is that you're playing your song live on Facebook, and you're there, and then when the song is over, there's no audience there, and you're like reading all the comments, and you can spend too long reading the comments and like talking to Joe and Mary had a baby, or Fiona and Frank got married, or and that's what you kind of like, for us, we'd be like, oh, this is boring, when are they going to play the next song, or so sometimes there's that aspect of it as well, isn't it?
I think go ahead, Kevin, go on.
No, sorry, go ahead. I was just
the only thing to add, I fully agree exactly what you're saying about some artists like, and some artists don't, and some do it really well, and some don't do it at all. But recently there has been a move from PRS, which is the Royalty Collection Agency in the UK, where they're going to impose a license on the artists to do these live events. Which I saw that, sure if I agree with that, because artists are already broke at the minute. So when you see something like that happen, you're kind of thinking, wow, they obviously feel that there's somebody making money from this. But also, is that the way the industry is going to go more so? Like, I don't know how many artists have contacted me over the last year about how to use OBS, or how to, I'm in sound setting here on Mac. How do I get the interface to talk to? I've been doing a lot of that kind of stuff,
Right, yeah.
And so artists are becoming technicians, and they're learning more about, I suppose, streaming. But I wholeheartedly agree with you, Kevin, about production value in these live streams. It's the one I've found myself, you're 100% right. The ones I found myself engaged with and looking at are the ones that actually treat it like a concert from a production value point of view, from a sound point of view, from a visual point of view. Like what you're saying, Keith, there wasn't much hello to Mary and Pat there down the road, you know, like localized comments, like that's no good to us if we're just like a fan of you. So yeah, I think the production value, and you know, a lot of artists can't access that type of value because of money and whatever.
Yeah.
But, there's definitely also as well, as you were speaking, I was thinking about like it's just a great way to keep playing. Like, because I find a play piano, if you don't play piano for a week or two, you're a little bit rusty. You know, there's things like that, you know, and the fact that you have some sort of an audience, although they're not really engaging with you in the way you're used to, it's just to keep on maintaining the art and your craft, you know, and your talent. So, yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, from an artist point of view, you know, you can't get out and gig, and you want to perform. You know, that's kind of in you. You know, we need to perform. You want that buzz of playing a song for people, and you know that buzz of people going, "Oh, that was great. I love that," and you know, that's part of it. You know, so yeah, do it. But I don't know if it's gonna. It's not going to be a huge thing. It's not going to break you, but it's definitely like, yeah, do it, but do it well and engage with your fans. Some people will engage with it. Some people love it. I don't think it's going to do anything huge for anybody, but it's another piece of the pie that you need to, I think every artist should maybe, if they feel comfortable with it, try it out. And maybe try it out a couple of times, because when you do it once, people don't really know what's happening. I think the best, what I've seen is people do it like 3 Sundays in a row or something, so that people know, okay, 8 o'clock Sunday, we got, you know, such and such goes live. That might give you a better idea of if it's working. Yeah, and just maybe give it a try. But I don't think it's going to do a huge amount other than just keep your fans at the minute kind of engaged for a little while. But you can see the numbers, you can see the stats, and you can make a fairly, you know, informed decision about how it's going. You know, as you play.
Yeah, I think it's just important for artists to keep their actual vocals going, their singing, performing, their guitar playing, piano playing, whatever it is, just to keep that going. Because, you know, if live music does come back later in the year and suddenly you haven't actually properly played an instrument, you're rusty.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. I was also thinking about, like, sometimes when you're looking at a live video on Instagram, that it hogs the app. You can't do anything else. Or on Facebook, I think when you're on a web browser, you can do like a picture-in-picture, so you can keep scrolling as you're watching and listening. So there's things like that. I'd be kind of like, God, if Instagram, I don't know if Instagram can do that yet, but sometimes, yes, I want to look at your show, but I also want to keep scrolling, you know?
Yeah, that's very true. You know, that's the other thing about just keeping it like just knowing your audience and knowing that people are just people, you know, that we just are on our phone and we just scroll. You know, if you can't expect people to just be like, right, okay, we're sitting down, popcorn ready, sitting down for an hour to watch this game. That's not realistic, you know. There's but that's a very good point that you would never really think of, as like maybe just that extra bonus of like, it's being able to stream it in the top corner and just scroll away. Yeah, it's a very good point.
Yeah, great. Right, I think we'll leave it at that. We've been talking for like an hour and 40 minutes, which is great.
Wow.
That's a good Songwriter Club in person. Never mind doing it online.
Yeah.
I'm looking
we're
at
giving out about people streaming, and we're going for an hour and 40. No one's watching. We lost everybody after 30 minutes.
Brian and Kevin, thanks very much for your contributions tonight. It was great.
Pleasure, Keith. Nice to chat to you. And Brian, nice to meet you.
You too, Kevin. Thank you very much. And Keith, thanks very much for hosting this. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks very much, lads. We'll be back next week for another Songwriter Club conversation. Thanks for joining us. And thanks to everyone for sending their comments in. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Peace out.